Well, I am back in the Berkey, so we'll see how many monthly videos I get out there. What's the Berkey? Shut up, Tally. Here's August of 2024. I started off the month with Trap. Look, I wanted to like this movie, but man, it kept on getting less and less believable as it got on. Basically, if you don't know what this film is about, it's about a guy going to a concert, except the concert itself is a trap, and the guy we're following is a serial killer, and the trap is for him. And when the film is at this concert, I thought it was fun. Josh Hartnett is a very charismatic lead that has some horrible direction from Shyamalan. At this point, every Shyamalan movie has robotic acting, so I think it's a stylistic choice rather than a lack of skill as a director, similar to how Yorgos Lanthimos uses robotic acting in his films. But where that enhances Yorgos' surrealist style of his films, Shyamalan and his dialogue and his direction really add nothing to the film but distract the viewers. It basically just keeps the audience asking, is that really how people talk? And the answer is no. When the film does go into the third act, that's when it completely checked out. It goes a lot bigger than it needed to be. Spoilers, kind of. They do leave the concert and have to deal with a whole new situation. And this is where the quote unquote twist comes into play. Which, I mean, I saw it a mile away once they did leave the concert and read at the next location. So that's not great. It goes for more of a dialogue heavy approach, but the decision is hard to pull off when the dialogue is so clunky and has no rhythm. And the story just kept on getting more and more unbelievable, so I checked out. So while the concert itself was fun in the film, the overall film does not stick the landing in the third act because it tries to be bigger than it really needs to be. I then watched The Bikeriders, and this was another really disappointing watch. I really did not like this movie. It is derivative of better movies like Goodfellas and really has no substance or no apparent meaning that drives the movie forward. And the plot is also not strong enough to keep me invested throughout, so it's just a bland movie. Basically, it's a Goodfellas-like approach to a story about a motorcycle gang in Chicago in the 60s during its rise and fall. It cuts back and forth, jumps around, similar to other crime films that do it with precision and grace, but here it's just sloppy. That being said, Jodie Comer is incredible in this film. She has a commanding performance carrying the weight of her character. She portrays strength and a caretaker while also being a firecracker. Her performance reminded me a lot of Penelope Cruz and what she did in Ferrari, just very unpredictable at every turn. But she does outshine Elvis 2.0 and Tom Hardy mumbling through another performance. I was disappointed how much these two performances lacked compared to Comer's, as they just play their archetypal roles without any nuances. In the end, even a strong performance from Jodie Comer could not save this bland movie. And then watch Smokey and the Bandit. Look, I watched this film back in June again and again in August, and I noticed more just how great the pacing is and how sincere it is. Like, if this film came out today, I think the directors and writers would poke a lot more fun at the ridiculous premise of bootlegging cores carrying an entire movie. But this was back in the 70s, and it was taken with sincerity. It is truly felt that everyone had both a fun time with the ridiculous premise, but also truly believed that it was a good movie as well. They weren't ashamed of it. They are proud of it, and that is something that I think is missing a lot from blockbusters nowadays. There's also just no fat on this thing. The editing is perfect, and it's a really fun time. So, if you haven't seen it, watch it. I then watched Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. Look, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure is an 80s fluff and cheese film, so for a sequel I was expecting more or less the same, but this movie is actually a lot different than the first one. This film is about an evil Bill and Ted killing our protagonist and Bill and Ted having to travel through hell and cheat death to save the world through their music. Crazy. Dealing with the journey through the afterlife rather than a time travel movie, there's a lot of imaginative sequences, like the betrayals of both Bill and Ted's personal hells and the way they break out of the afterlife by cheating death. The production design and cinematography are really, really interesting, especially during these sequences. And, I mean, they could have phoned in a script for a sequel to Bill and Ted of all things, but they took creative risks, and that's why I respect this movie, even if it does drag, especially in the beginning of the film, even if the villains are kind of an afterthought. They just kind of show up and have real no motivation. This movie isn't one that I call my favorites, but it's definitely a sequel I respect for purely swinging for the fences, even though it falls flat in some places. I then watched Gone in 60 Seconds, and Nicolas Cage is great and carries this otherwise over bloated and clunky movie from being a completely horrible watch. It is a light, fun time, though, if you turn off your brain. Yeah, this is basically Fast and Furious before Fast and Furious was everything, so, you know, take that as you will. I really did not enjoy this movie. I then watched Twisters. I was surprised on how much this film works outside the theater experience. I mean, there are some films that are way better to watch in the theater, but once you leave the theater, it's lacking something, like Avatar. But, you know, watching this outside the theater, I found myself enjoying it a lot more, maybe even more than the first time. One thing I didn't really talk about my July video and my Twisters segment on it is that the visuals are really top notch. I mean, it feels real, and I think it works because they're mostly shooting on location in Oklahoma. The sound is also great too, with little wind and rain and little details like destruction going through all speakers. All of it is really well realized to create a fun and intense ride during the film. And yeah, that's basically what it is. I think it's a very well-made blockbuster that a lot of people aren't talking about now because it got overshadowed by Deadpool and Wolverine. But hey, it's a good time. I then watched Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown. And yeah, that's a long title, but I really did enjoy this thing. This is part of my Almodovar film class, so you'll be seeing a lot of him for the next few months. Almodovar has such a great eye for set design, fashion, everything that is in the frame he commands, bringing it to his most vibrant self. Especially in this film, which, is very brightly colored, from the apartment building to the vivid dresses to even the coffee pot earrings on one of the characters. I mean, all this film really strives for maximalist filmmaking in terms of costuming and sets and creating a busy and interesting looking frame in nearly every shot. The film also has vivid characters too. It is not just production design. Peppa, played by Carmen Mora, obviously has the most going on with her character until the final frame. She perfectly encapsulates someone going through a nervous breakdown but trying to seem normal on the front line. Hence all the duck symbolism across the entire film, which a duck is trying to seem normal above water, but is scrambling to stay afloat underneath the surface, like Peppa in this film. Another great player in this film is Marisa, played by Rosie De Palma, who is asleep for a lot of this film, and I won't tell you why, but just watch it, and her performance and personality was so memorable and fun. I loved it. And that's what I would describe this film as. It's fun. It's a fun movie with great comedy, great suspense and tension toward the back half, memorable characters, and a good central performance, all packaged in this great-looking film that is always vivid and always interesting to look at. I then watched Matador. Look, this is another Almodovar film, and this one is a lot more shocking, but I really loved it. Basically, the film revolves around this bullfight masked as a romance story. The opening sequence alone tells you that this romance is not one of love, but it's one of allurement, aggression, and conquering. And between the two power-hungry people obsessed and fetishizing their own death. This is the center of the film, but there's a lot more going on underneath the surface too, between small plot threads, and even with the small screen time with the police detective everything is incredibly important here. And I think that's what Almodovar does best here. Of course, his production design and costuming are all great, and the blocking of actors is incredibly well handled, but the script is also very well done. The story is slowly revealed, and you're just sucked into this world of power-hungry, toxic people, and how one man gets all the brunt of the responsibility, played by Antonio Banderas. As an early role for him, it was a very good performance. Coming out a decade after Francisco Franco's death in Spain, it was very divided at the time, and Almodovar seems to be putting both sides of Spain, the old conservative and the new wave of toxic and envious people, and put them in a brutal chase and fight with each other. Their romance never seems to work out with each other. There will always be an outcome of one coming up on top out of the other, showcasing how divided Spain really is, and how Almodovar is arguing that this ugly division cannot survive in Spain because they are simply not compatible for each other. Almodovar's cinematography is also beautiful, capturing the city of Madrid in these nice, big, wide open shots the property of Diego being displayed in mostly isolating shots, and how Maria bolts up vertically into the frame whenever she commits an act of violence, showcasing energy and life. The close-up of Angel, played by Medeiros. The church scene at the beginning was one of my favorites that plays with the lighting of all the candles in the background. And of course, the yellowish tint of the eclipse scene in the climax. All of it is so great. An intense tale about two equals trying to conquer each other and the people who take their responsibilities. This film is an intoxicating watch of purely great craftsmanship. And I did go over my time limit. So, yeah, if you stuck around, thanks for watching. And I will be back hopefully in October. Hopefully a little earlier than mid October, but I will be back. That is for sure.